It's time for me to talk about the new Netflix series, The Dragon Prince. Not to be confused with the comic book and the novel of the same name, which made looking up information on the show a bit difficult. The show was created by Aaron Ehasz, who was a writer for Avatar The Last Airbender, and Justin Richmond, who was the director of Uncharted 2 and 3. The two of them teamed up to form a new studio they called Wonderstar! Sorry, I really like that name. Sounds like a special attack. The Dragon Prince is the first thing the studio produced, and so far it's made quite a first impression. The show is set in a fantasy world, and it's about a war that took place between humans and elves, which has left a continent divided. Then the humans, those evil humans, kill a great dragon that was helping the elves. But the dragon's one and only egg is discovered in the basement of a castle, and the two princes of that kingdom, as well as an elf assassin who originally was supposed to kill them, take the egg and go on a quest to try and save it and hopefully prevent more war. So as I said before, one of the head writers of Avatar The Last Airbender worked on the show, and it's pretty apparent because both shows have a lot of similarities. Most notably, the focus on lore and world building, as well as give us some very memorable and complex characters. There's a lot of moments in the show, like when a very obvious villain who has a nefarious plot is shown to also have kind of a human side. And then they have a really douchey character who's kind of a jerk to one of the main characters. But then they present him with a moral dilemma, and they kind of show that maybe he's not such a bad person after all. A lot of great designs in the show. I like how the elves look. They gave them horns and 4 fingers and various other interesting features. They do have purple skin and facial marks that are kind of reminiscent of the night elves from way back when I used to play World of Warcraft. Yo, where my night elves at? A lot of the designs seem very reminiscent of Avatar as well, like the armor that the humans wear seems very similar to that of the Fire Nation, like with the colors and everything, although the Fire Nation was based more on Japanese armor, but this is more medieval type. There's a lot of creatures that show up that seem like they came right out of Avatar, and it seems to have a very similar sense of humor as well. And while we're talking about Avatar, Callum, the oldest of the 2 human princes, is voiced by Jack Decena, who is the voice of Sokka. A lot of great voice acting in this as well. Rayla, the elf assassin, has a very, very thick Scottish accent, and every time she talks, all I can think about is like Myrda from Brave or something. And there's even a point where she says something similar to something Myrda said, like, if you had a chance to change your fate or something like that. So this show was really good. It's got some great creative talent behind it. It's got some great voice actors. It has a really interesting story. It's got some interesting lore. But it also has a few problems. Let's start with the small stuff. So first off, this show seems a bit too modern for its fantasy setting, if that makes any sense. There were things like, they put movie quotes in this for some reason. Like, there was more than one occasion where a character said something like, "Say hello to my little friend," you know, Scarface, I guess. I don't know why they put that in there. They also had the inevitable "winter is coming" reference, because of course they did. Also, the personality and the cadence by which a lot of the characters spoke seemed a bit out of place. And look, I don't need my fantasy characters to be speaking in ye olde English or anything like that, but when you have a character who comes off like any jock character from any TV show or movie that came out in the past 20 years, it's going to stand out a little bit. In a later episode, they introduced this really cool character, but they established that she is either deaf or mute. I don't know which one or if any they established her as, but the point is she communicated using sign language, and she had one of her soldiers interpret for her, who she may or may not have some kind of relationship with. If it ain't canon, I'm shipping it. But the point is, she was using sign language, and I'll admit I don't know a whole lot about sign language, but did they have sign language in medieval times? It just seemed a bit strange. But you know what? All of that is a bit nitpicky. There is one major issue with this show, and it's the thing everyone is complaining about. The animation. It's done in CGI, which is fine, but It's very, very jittery. It's like they had less frames in between character movements. Like, for example, you'll see a character talking and their head will be here, and then suddenly they'll just kind of shift over to another position without any type of fluid movement. It actually reminded me a lot of the Lego movies, the way the characters move in that. But with the Lego movie, it makes a little bit more sense because they're Lego pieces and it's supposed to sort of mimic stop motion. But this, I have no idea why they did this. Now, it wasn't apparent all the time. Like, during the action sequences, the show looked pretty good. It's just when characters were kind of standing around talking, it's very blatantly obvious. And unfortunately, this is one of those shows that is heavy on exposition and world building and stuff like that, so it's going to come up a lot. It got to the point where I wasn't sure if this was some kind of design choice or a mistake. And if it was a design choice, then I just don't really understand what they were trying to go for. Maybe someone from the show could explain, but unfortunately, it's a mighty hurdle you're going to have to get over if you're going to watch this show. It doesn't really, destroy the show or anything, but it was a huge distraction. But despite all that, I still think the show is really good. It's got a great setting, great story, really great characters too. And I really like the main characters. The relationship between the two princes is very interesting. The oldest one is not the king's biological son, but he still loves him like a son anyway, but he still feels kind of distant from him. And he doesn't really feel like he's good at anything, but then he starts to learn he's got kind of a knack for magic. And the younger one has the ability to talk to animals and is much more carefree. And Rayla is really cool too. She was originally supposed to assassinate them, but then eventually she just really starts to like them. Unfortunately, we've not gotten a confirmation on a season 2 yet. Seems to be a theme for fantasy-themed Netflix shows lately. Although, unlike with Disenchanted, the show doesn't really end on a cliffhanger, more like foreshadow. And it is definitely a show I really want to continue, so hopefully we get more in the future. But until then, be sure to check it out. But that's all I got for The Dragon Prince on Netflix. Leave a comment below and let me know what you thought of it. My name is Rob, and have a wonderful day.